Dan Bublitz Comedy Productions.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Art of Bombing podcast. It is me, your host, Dan Bublitz Jr., and with me as always is my co-host, co-producer, and cohort, Mr. Josh Shirley. How's it going, Josh? How you feeling today?
Good, man. Good. Heat wave in
Continues?
Kansas City. Yeah, it's finally kind of like reasonable outside.
How's it starting to dissipate?
Yeah, I thought that the sun and the moon changed places last week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like
Just
swapped.
torture.
It was really bad. And
You know how you battle the heat? You get yourself one of them water slides for your backyard.
Yeah, that's what I needed. Yeah. I was saying this last week, like I needed to go back to that water park. But yeah, that's over now. It kind of feels like typical September, August situation.
Starting to feel like fall.
Yeah. Now it's going to go back up again, they're saying. So I'm not counting not out of the woods just yet. Not out of the burning woods.
Not counting all your eggs. Not counting all your firewood.
No, yeah.
Not counting all your eyes. I don't know. These are bad analogies.
It is. And I had a conversation with somebody. I felt old this week in two ways.
Oh, did you now?
Yeah. Number one, somebody said to me, it was a barista, and she was like, I can always tell somebody's age by what they order. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, if you're old, you order hot drinks. And if you're young, you order cold brews. And I was like, can I have a hot coffee, please? And so
I wish it was more specific than that, though.
But that's how that's her judgment of the world.
Yep.
She's just out there,
I'm old too, so because I'm
slinging her prejudices and her stereotypes out when she makes the coffee.
Did you not tip? Was that like grounds to cut the tip a little bit?
Yeah, maybe I pressed the 20 button instead of the 25 button, but I was a little bit like, nah, not as much this time.
I think she does it, long enough. She could break it down even more, because I really think, what I was waiting for you to say is that she had like people who order drip coffee are old. People who order, foo-foo drinks are this way. Or whatever. But
see, I thought there was going to be more to it as well, but it's like hot outside, and she's like, "Oh, you're getting a hot coffee? All right, Gramps, let me whip that up for you." What an idiot! Yeah. So I was like, "All right." I still I just haven't caught on to cold coffees yet.
Me either, man. I can't do it.
There you go, dude.
I drink warm coffee 365 days a year. So I guess I'm old with you, buddy. I'm old with you.
Here's the other way that I felt old this week. And it happened just now because I freaking forgot the second thing that I was going to say about it.
The memory faded, and that was the second instance of being old. I was going to say something else, and I forgot it.
There it is. There you go.
Well, I guess we should just get into this episode, because we have a great episode today. We have a great guest, fantastic comedian from Denver, Colorado. Lisa Lane is on the podcast today. Yes, and we talked about all kinds of fun things. And speaking of us being old, one of the main topics that we talk about with Lisa is about, starting comedy later in life. That's something that both you and I did.
And we talk more about that. That's one of the topics we will be covering, a little preview that we will be covering on this week's bonus episode, the Between Bombs callback. So you can, we'll go deeper into that then. But it was a great episode. There's a lot of great insight, coming from somebody who not only has, talking about starting later, but has a public speaking background and a theater background, very similar to you, Josh.
Yeah, very.
In that
she has a lot of things she's good at. But what I liked a lot about her too is that she knows who she is and who her audience is and who they're not.
And that's important. I'm still trying to figure that out, I think. I mean, I got a pretty good, I'm getting it honed in. But now it's a matter of finding that audience, building that material to find that audience. Like, I know that I'm my main audience, and I mentioned in the episode, is my age plus or minus about 10 years.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty good.
That's
outside of that, I don't know. I mean, I can do fine with older crowds and sometimes with younger crowds, but I'm kind of getting that audience honed in. But I tell you what, before we get in this episode, I do want to mention, you know what I did here the other day? Like, I just did this morning, actually. And that is that I listened back to my comedy album.
Right. The most recent one?
My most recent album, which came out a year and a half ago.
Big fan.
Recorded 2 years ago. But anyway, I was listening to it and I was like, oh, this is awful.
Just because you kind of the natural course of getting better.
Yep. And I acknowledge that. That's something that, the younger me would not have done. But I was able to acknowledge that, when I recorded it, it was good for when I recorded it, good for when I released it. But now when I listen back to it, I'm like, oh, I'm so much better as a performer. And some of those jokes I could make so much better now.
That's what you should think, right? If you don't, you're not better.
Yeah, exactly. You want to have that progression. And this is my when the callbacks episode comes out this week is my maybe I can't remember if it's the 7th or the 9th. I have to look specifically, but this week is my 13-year comedy anniversary. So that's cool for me. I've been doing it for 13 years. And one of the things I always do, and I mentioned it to other people, and they're just like flabbergasted by this, is I recorded my very first open mic ever.
Yes.
I videotaped it. And every year on my anniversary, I like to go watch it.
You like to watch it. That's interesting.
I like to watch it because it's a good gauge to see where I started and to where I am. Like, it's a good motivator to be like, oh, I'm way better than that. So at least I'm evolving as a comedian. I'm getting better as a comedian. So we need those things.
Your comedy career can now watch Revenge of the Sith.
Exactly. And I'm going to be celebrating my comedy anniversary in North Carolina at the North Carolina Comedy Festival in Greensboro, North Carolina. So
get there.
If you're out there, if you're a fan of the show, and if you're another comedian on the fest and you listen to the podcast, come say hi. Let's hang out. It's going to be a good time. That's September 8th and 9th. I will be performing at the Idiot Box Comedy Club. So I think, should we get into this episode?
We should get into this episode.
All right. Here's our conversation with Lisa. Enjoy.
It's the art of bombing.
So we're doing this early in the afternoon. We've been trying to get this nailed down, and you said that you have a show tonight. So I'm curious, what's your show tonight?
Oh, I'm going to do a show for a nursing home at 7 p.m. Yeah, this is how I've been. That's what I've been doing lately, Dan. I've been doing the big nursing home circuit. So seriously, building a growing audience, right? So no, I have one of those tonight. And those can happen, by the way, at any time of day or night. I'm telling you, sometimes I'm after bingo and it's literally at 1 p.m. So tonight it's an evening show at an independent living. And so this will probably actually be a fun one where there will be a bar of sorts, and there, probably even couples and people who are there for a variety of reasons, but it will be their happy hour night out. And that can be really fun in retirement homes. Yeah. And then there's it's a whole gamut.
I'm sure. I'm curious. Like, how did you get into that market?
Crazy,
I mean,
that's a funny thing. that's actually interesting because I would never have chosen this. I do not think of myself as good with retired people, with old people. I don't think of myself as being like, my deal is teenagers and kids, Mm, um,
That's how I feel. I'm like, my
yeah,
my demographic is my age
yeah,
plus or minus 10 years.
yeah,
Anything
yeah.
outside of that, I don't feel like I do well with.
Well, funny, right? And my demographic in terms of comedy is certainly women my age. I mean, that's my superpower. And younger. I mean, I relate to the younger and younger. Anyway, it just never occurred to me to try to relate to older and older because, like I said, I'm building a dying audience. Come on. You know what? It was a random thing. I do corporate and things like that. So it was a random thing that a friend who is an entertainer, just a completely different genre of entertaining, does this, and they were looking for, retirement home entertainment, right? You can imagine
Mhm.
they bring in a clown and a bingo and crafts and hula
Yep.
dancing and whatever. Hey, do you want to do comedy? And then it turns out that they have quite a few of these gigs. And here's the thing, Dan, it pays better than bar shows.
Oh, I believe
And
that. Most
right? I
corporate.
mean, it pays better
Yeah.
than most of the things that we do besides corporate gigs. And I've also realized it is like literally in and out. I don't have to sit and watch anybody else's comedy. I mean, which is part of how I grow and love to grow. But you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
go in, I
Yep.
do it. Obviously the stakes are super low. When I'm done, I'm done. I mean, there's a little bit of, when I'm packing up my mic at the end, there will be some sassy older people who come and say, you were really fun. And the truth is, some of them are so funny because there's always a sassy old lady out there, right? Who's got
Yep.
a tag for me or honestly like a perspective. And so I started just like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. It's mic time, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whole thing we'll talk about what I'm even doing with comedy. Anyway, so I started doing it like 6 months ago. And the truth was it gave me it excited me about writing in a new way that I
Oh,
was
interesting.
Yep. Because I'll tell you something, right? If there's a joke that lands with that audience and it works at Comedy Works and it works at a bar show, well, that's a good joke and I'm keeping it forever.
Yep.
And so it was just kind of interesting, like, and I have to be so, 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 so clean. The people who hire me request that, but I think that they would be fine if I push those boundaries. No, these people will tell you in a second. I mean, like, they're just, nope, that just
Yep.
distasteful, So it's been really interesting. I have to go to clean material and then, well, what can I talk about with these people that they will think is funny? It's been quite a joy for me, really.
That's great. Yeah, I've seen listings, because there's all these third party sites where you can put
Yeah.
your profile on for these kind of corporate gigs. I mean, because this would be kind of lumped into a corporate gig in the sense where it's not necessarily a corporation, but it's a corporate gig.
Yep.
And I've seen listings for I've had inquirers come in about doing these, and I'm always like, I'm not the person.
God, I can't believe
But
I remember talking to a friend of mine when I was about to do this and just say, yeah, okay, wild hair kind of thing. Cause I'm telling you, retirement homes make me feel uncomfortable.
mhm.
My dad died a few years ago from terrible dementia. And I did say to the person who hired me, I said, I reserve the right to, if this at any time just brings up too much for personally, then I'm just gonna walk out and leave. And it didn't. It's the opposite because the truth is the people who come to these shows do not have dementia. And
Mhm.
so there's nothing there to even
Yeah.
touch. Now, on the other hand, I have jokes about dementia. Probably not gonna tell them there,
Yeah, gotta be
right?
careful with the kind of material,
Yeah.
subject matter, yeah.
I mean, really, and I tell a lot of jokes about being old, old lady, newly married. I'm recently married and in my old age and how funny that is. So of course, a lot of that stuff just kills
Mhm.
with the older crowd. I mean, a while ago, a young friend of mine said, "Do you really want to be the chin hair comic of Denver?" And I went, "Yeah, kind of," because all ladies kind of, yeah. And now I've got like a whole friggin' 5 minutes on chin hairs. Oh, it kills at the retirement home,
No,
you
that's
know.
I'm sure it does, that's great.
Mhm.
It's
So it's
interesting.
been funny. Yeah.
Do you do so in addition to, like, the retirement homes, are you also going into, like, assisted living
Yeah.
type places too?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
because I kind of wondered that so we just moved. My partner's mom just moved to Fort Collins, and she lives in. It's not a retirement home, but it's not an assisted living. I guess it's a senior community, 55 and
Yeah.
older
Oh,
community.
that's
So
exactly right. What you just
yeah,
said. This year I turned 55. So that's how I start. I go, excuse me.
mhm,
This is amazing. I just walked by your dinner.
yeah,
Somebody make that for me. And there's a lot of that. So those are the best shows. And one tonight is like that. It's like a retirement campus. So there's all different. Honestly, these people, a lot of them I think will be living quite independently. And even as
mhm,
couples, maybe they're in a wheelchair, right? So it's physical, but their brains are so
yeah,
it runs the gamut. I have also got a company that books me at like an adult daycare, which is not that fun because it's just literally, it's not even elder adults, it's people of across every spectrum who need to
mhm,
be in it's that's sort of hard. But um
yeah,
it's so weird. You know what I mean? Like part of comedy is repetition. Part of it is saying the damn words again and again, right? Like
yep.
I can tell the difference when
Building
I'm
that
not.
muscle memory. Yep.
I mean, 500 open mics in 2019. I did almost 500 open mics in 2019, infamously. So I know that, well, this is a way to, I have a lot of practice, do it just saying the words, right? I was saying for a while, I'm not sure if doing retirement home comedy is making me better or worse. Of course, it's making you better because it's repetition, it's a challenge. But I was just like, well, the stakes are so low. I mean, if they
Mhm.
fall asleep, it's not my fault. Um, Somebody just takes a nap. You go, well, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just been funny that's the weirdest thing that I've been doing lately, and I would not have expected to love it so much. And there is, not gonna lie, there is a little bit of hero sauce built in there about like, golly gee, I'm bringing joy and happiness to people in these homes. And I also know that again, that's easy. The bar is low. Sometimes I just wear bright colored clothes and I talk loud and I have a lot of energy. So they just kind of think I'm cute. Um, and that works. But then it's also, like I said, it's very interesting because they don't want people of a certain age, most of them, I think we can say truly, they don't want edgy.
Mhm.
They don't want to think too hard about it. Right? So
Yep.
what is the sweet spot of jokes like that? I mean, like, in fact, some people of that age, and probably just some people like my mother, who is that age, my mother appreciates jokes that she kind of gets in advance.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like,
No, I know exactly what you mean, where they kinda know the direction you're going, and they get there before you get there.
right? Which is
Yep.
sort of Johnny Carson, Jay Leno style, right? Like late night hero, DTT. It's just so funny because, like, gosh, as a comic, isn't that what we always try to avoid? Is the obvious, is the expected. I mean, surprise me, the misdirect, all of it, right? So it's a very funny thing because I don't want to go in there. I think I could go into nursing homes and tell sticky jokes out of a joke book,
Mhm.
and they would be delighted.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? And
Yeah.
I no part of me wants to do that. So to treat it as an exercise in getting better at comedy, at stand-up comedy, it's been really interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that for so
No, this
long.
is great.
Boy, oh
This
boy,
is I
isn't
mean,
that
this is
funny?
great because, I've had guests on that have done, do a lot of corporate and things like that, but I don't think I've ever had anybody on that, I'm sure somebody's had one of these gigs, but like
Yeah.
not specifically doing a lot of them, which is
Yeah, and it's
interesting.
not what I intended, and I don't intend to keep doing it because I honestly, what am I gonna do with it? Like building the audience, but it does give me better legs. I mean, my favorite corporate gigs, of course, are for like, um, groups of women entrepreneurs. Come
Mhm.
on. I mean, you do a gig like that, and in my position, it's like, why would I ever even want to do comedy again? That was a perfect experience. They're anticipating my jokes in the best ways because they're living my life and they're
Mhm.
screaming with laughter and cheering my name, right?
Yep.
Those corporate gigs, amazing. Um, but yeah, retirement gigs. Oh
No,
yeah,
that's
it's
great. I'm
funny. It's
curious
cool.
with like when you do those gigs, like how long do you have to perform? What are the
Oh,
particular performances?
oh, Dan, I have an hour.
Oh, so you have to perform for an hour.
I
Yeah.
have an hour to fill.
Okay.
I have asked, and so probably that means 45 minutes of entertaining.
Mhm.
And I always come prepared with I have a book of Mad Libs. Remember Mad Libs?
Oh yeah. Yep.
I always come prepared with, like, maybe if they have a joke they want to tell. I've thought a lot about this. Like, should I be prepared to play a game to, you know what I mean? Because I thought,
Mhm.
how the hell am I going to fill a 45-minute spot with squeaky clean material, nothing edgy? They don't need to know that I was on a Netflix show called How to Build a Sex Room that never comes up at the retirement homes, you know? It's the younger workers there. The younger workers, they're caretakers who follow me out to the parking lot and are like, "Oh my God, we recognize you from this show."
Oh, that's
So,
funny.
how am I going to do it? And the truth is, okay, first of all, they're older. The pace can be slower and probably should be slower.
Mhm.
This is like I said, I am not counting laughs every second. So I can build out my jokes. I can tell the long version of jokes, right? I can find what is a story, but then where are the jokes? So again, it's just embarrassingly, it's like a free place to work on my long set. You know,
Mhm.
it's a
No,
free
that's
place to
great. I
work
mean,
on
that's
my hour.
yeah. I mean, well, and that's what we all as comedians. I mean, realistically, that's all what we all want is to be able to stretch and work on longer material.
I know
You
it.
know,
I
have
know it
that
exactly, at a
opportunity.
place where I'm never, there's no host there who hired me or producer, looking at their mic going, really, or looking at their watch, or exactly. But I mean, on the other hand, I really do have to fill that time. But
Mhm.
as a performer, I mean, it makes you better because first of all, I am never ever gonna say in my life, very rarely will I ever say, "Oh, what else can I talk about?" I never ever want to let anybody see that I don't know what's coming next. It's just actor
Yep.
from way back, you know? So there's not a lot of hemming and hawing. Anyway, it's just been interesting. Yeah, I want it to be entertaining, but again, there is less pressure and there's a slower pace. And again, it has allowed me to find things. It's not always the interesting thing about this, because lately I took a couple of months almost off this summer. My son was
Mhm.
here um, from abroad, and so we just kind of had family time. And then last week I had 4 shows that I cared about, and I had 20 minutes, and I didn't want to do all clean material. So it's interesting, the retirement home stuff. Some of the things that I want to work on and practice on expanding, the ones that are more fun to me are the dirty ones.
Mhm.
Honestly, the blue material is usually more fun to think of more tags and how can I can't do that at the retirement homes at all. So it's interesting, but that's what open mics are for. I mean, this has also been
Yep.
kind of by design. You get it. I mean, it was just like, I don't know what I'm doing in comedy. We can talk about that, but I, mm, never be so arrogant to say it. But like, it's not worth it to me right now in my life to go spend 3 hours at a mic for 3 minutes.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I get that. I mean, that's one thing, I've seen in comedy because, I've moved around a little bit and I've been in different comedy scenes and I see it a lot. It's come up on this podcast a lot, talking about the grind. If you're not
Yep.
going to the open mics, you're not a comedian and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, no. And you also, there's so many other variables because, when people start comedy later in life, like myself, I started comedy when I was 31. I already had a life and, regular job and things like that. And there's other things I'm doing in my life. I'm not going to just go dedicate all my time to comedy, you know? And the same thing with a lot of people. There's a lot of people that get into comedy that are in similar situations where they're married or have kids and, other responsibilities and can't dedicate that time. But then you get to a point when you're doing comedy where it's like, well, how beneficial is it for me to go sit for 3 hours for this 3 minutes?
And at
Like
a certain point, it
I could
was
just sit at
beneficial.
home. Well,
Right,
yeah, when you first start, it absolutely is. But
right.
you get to that point where you'd be
Yeah,
better off just sitting at home writing than
writing,
going to
watching
the
other
open mic.
people's comedy. Right,
Yeah.
exactly right. I know, exactly. But, you do, and I've heard you talk about it with other guests on this podcast, and I love it because your attitude is always like, "Whatever, what does it mean to even be a comedian? Don't worry about it." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't
Just go
worry
be
about it.
funny.
Right, but you get into that because it is an 8th grade cafeteria mentality, as is
You're giving it less credit than me. I usually say high school, but
8th grade girls in the
middle
cafeteria.
school.
Yeah, and they will shame you for not, "Well, you're not grinding enough." Exactly. So, anyway, and also as I think any creative pursuit I've ever pursued, that is a thing, right? I mean, there's sort of a like you want to, yeah, there is built into any kind of, I think, creative processes, especially entertaining. There is built in that imposter complex. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, the imposter syndrome. Oh, absolutely.
Right. And all of that. But then, as you were just talking about it, like as a comedian who, right, you grow older, you have a family, you live a life. In almost every walk of life, isn't it true that you would have a more well-rounded person, as they say, as the educators say? We want the whole person. My son just started a PhD program in mathematics, if you can believe.
Wow.
And he was just, I know, and he was just telling me, like, first day of school report that a professor was saying, because this is crazy upper level math, a professor was saying, I don't want students who are just good at math. I want students who are good at life, who've had life experience. Because if you've had to solve problems in your life other than math problems, you're going to be a better mathematician. So isn't that interesting? Like it applies to that. Same thing as comedy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and I think too, and like I said, we've talked about it before on this podcast, but comics forget that if you're not, still living life, you don't have any experiences to draw material from anyway, and then you don't become you're no longer relatable.
Right, right. And it is, yeah, I mean, it's that insular snake eating its own tail in any little group, right? But where you do so much navel gazing, I mean, it's like you're doing, you know what, your last guest, Mandy Kay, talked about this, the last one I listened to anyway. And the pandemic did change something for me in that way, because at a certain point when I'm doing all those open mics, and it really, really matters to me what the other comics in Denver, and then as I start to take it on the road, still, what do the other comics think about this, right? And then it's about like, how do I promote myself? I don't know. The pandemic changed things for so many of us, right? Because we were doing comedy in parking lots and we were accosting people as they picked up their pickup food, their to-go food orders. We were just, right. And then once we started to come back and we had to be so careful about so many things, it became so clear. Oh God, making people laugh. That's what it's actually about. Communicating with them. What do they want? Oh, right. And so that becomes, well, what do I know about real life? Not what do I know about everybody else's set at Lion's Lair at 2:00 in the morning, which is kind of where I was getting, where comedy was my whole life. And it's like, yeah, the pandemic did slow things down in a lot of ways and make me go, oh, right. You gotta live your life and then find what's relatable. And it is an interesting thing that I get to do, which is to help people find the funny.
Yeah, and that's great. That's a great way to put it, because finding that's exactly what we do, is to help people find the funny. And that's and I think too with that, it's easy to forget that too. That's one thing I always see too is comics, they and you can call it your creative integrity, and I get that. You want to do your jokes and what you wrote and things like that, but you do have to have, it's like any relationship. That's what comedy is. When you're performing, you're building a relationship with that audience, and with every relationship there are some sacrifices that have to be made in order for that to be a fulfilling relationship.
That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're doing. And it's like, if you're doing the material you want to do just because you want to do it and it's not landing with an audience, but you refuse to change that, you're not going to go far. And it's same thing. If you had that same mentality in a relationship, that relationship's going to end.
That's such a good point. Oh, that's such a good point. That's so true. Being like selfish and a focus only on yourself in a relationship versus, that's a great way to put it. Were you always funny even before you started doing comedy? Did you know you were funny?
I was very sarcastic. I think that was, I was a smart ass is what I was. I was very, I was a smart ass kid. I talked back to my parents. I said things like that. So yes, in a lot of ways I was funny, but I guess I didn't really think about it. It was just how I was brought up. Like I just,
interesting.
And my upbringing, because my family is, a lot of my family members are loud and kind of obnoxious. And I come from a, blue collar family background of laborers who, drank and partied. And, so I was around a lot of that. A lot of my parents' friends were, and they were very young. So I was brought up by young people. So, so they, talked a certain way. So that stuff just kind of, it affected how I was raised to the
And
point where,
being funny was of value. I mean, right? They would rank
exactly.
each other, and you had to.
Yeah, they wanted to have a
Yeah.
good time, and being funny is part of having a good time.
Sure.
So,
Interesting.
So yeah, I definitely had that there, but I didn't think about it like that
Yeah.
as, to me, I was just being me,
Yeah,
and
no,
that's
that's what I
how,
wonder. Isn't that interesting? Because I was on a show, one of the first shows I ever did with like only women, and I was so excited because they were bigger than me. I mean, national tour, I was so excited. And I said, comedy always got me in trouble. And they said, oh, comedy always got us out of trouble.
and I was just about to say that. That's one thing I did find as I grew older, that comedy and humor was a way, especially the back talking, was a way that I got out of bullying.
Yeah.
Like that's how I
Yep. Yeah.
combated bullies.
Right.
They would say something to
Yep.
me, and I wasn't afraid to say something back,
Sure.
and I
Yeah.
would, you stab at me, I'm going to stab
Yep.
back, but I'm coming with both hands,
That's it. The smart tricky kid who could, destroy the football quarterback with a line. Yeah.
Yep. And
Yeah.
but again, as a kid, you don't think about it as, oh, I was a funny kid and I was just being silly and making jokes.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I was just trying not to get beat up,
Yeah, exactly. No, that's what's so funny. And I really do ask it a lot now because I have realized that I don't come from a funny family. I mean, my family of origin, no, not a value. It was not valued. It was not encouraged in me. And I was just silly. I was just goofy. And I'm still silly and goofy. And I wanted a lot of attention. I mean, I was always singing and dancing and and I love being funny and I loved making people laugh. But very quickly, I realized that was not currency in my family. And then even in schools, I remember like junior high again, like giving boys, this is like such a fascinating thing to me. It's the same age when girls start to like not be so good in math and science. And we really need to encourage them because it's sort of like, oh, it's not cool to be smart. Somehow it wasn't cool to be funny and incisive. So I remember like under my breath giving jokes to boys in
Oh,
math
wow.
class that then they would say out loud and get the laughs or get in trouble or whatever it was. But I was just like, I don't want to make any waves. Isn't that anyway weird?
That's an interesting
Fascinating. Yeah. So
observation.
funny got me in trouble, I think, for my whole life. But I mean, obviously, anybody who's met me will tell you, yeah, she's pretty funny. But I didn't value. I was always trying to be very serious. Took myself very seriously as a young person. I mean, my performance background is I went to theater school and I acted in Shakespeare. That I was a Shakespearean actor on the East Coast in my youth.
Okay.
So I didn't think I was very funny. I really didn't think I was funny. I mean,
more dramatic. You're going to the dramatic angle.
And
And
because comedy was so scary.
Yeah, what's interesting with my upbringing though is before I could do comedy, I had to really overcome public speaking. So like around, like using comedy in words and lines like that to combat bullies and fit in with family and so on and so forth. That was all just like whatever. But then when it came to performing, like I was deathly afraid of public speaking. Like I couldn't do, I had trouble doing speeches in class. Anytime I had to do any kind of oral interpretation or a speech or anything in front of the class, I got super nervous. I got clammy, like I would stutter and I was not good at it. And I even had a teacher in high school realize that, where they're like, oh, you're really good at I was really good at writing ideas, and like I could BS my way through an essay like nobody's business. But if I had to do a speech, the opposite, and
that's
even
amazing
teachers
that
noticed
you
that.
overcame that and became a successful stand-up because that's the hardest, scariest thing to do.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean,
Awesome.
For me, it was a trigger. There, something triggered it. It was an experience in life that triggered to finally push me to face that fear. And
I coached an up and coming comic who was so impressive. And he had just developed such an intense fear of speaking in public that he was taking like Toastmasters. He was going to public speaking classes because it had gotten so bad he couldn't even like get through a job interview kind of thing. Public speaking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I
wasn't quite that bad, but
yeah.
But
and so to challenge himself, he started doing public speaking, I mean, to fix a thing, right? But then somehow I'm like, and then you jumped into a stand-up comedy. Fascinating. And what a great way to cure. Because that's what I was going to say. Being a dramatic, my background as a dramatic performer, well, comedy scared me because it's only you and there's a measure. You can do you can read
and
even
it's
like
an
a sad
instant
poem.
measure.
You know what I mean? You can read a
Yep.
sad poem, or you can do something on stage or whatever that's inspirational or dramatic or sad or whatever any emotion is. But laughter is laughter. And if they don't laugh, you failed. And so what a way to face the fear of public speaking. I mean, that's really impressive that you only had the one half of it. But that's interesting because I think, and I was told at the beginning of my little comedy, whatever I'm doing here,
The journey.
yes, journey, adventure. I think being theatrical I had to get over it. It was not necessarily in my favor. I think it hindered me sometimes.
I think you know what? And granted, we just met, but I totally feel like I know what you're talking about from seeing other people that have theater backgrounds. I've noticed, if you watch somebody who just does, just started comedy, that's the only thing they've done performance wise. They're more, comedy. But if you see somebody that comes from like a theatrical background, they seem like they're acting as a stand-up comic. If that makes sense. So it's a stand-up. You got a person being a stand-up
playing the part of that's
someone
it. Sometimes
playing a stand-up.
Happens,
and that's one thing I noticed with people with theatrical backgrounds. That becomes more. They're playing a stand-up instead of being a stand-up.
Right. And some comics find a little character or a gimmick on stage that actually makes it work, and so that's interesting what you said. Like, you're playing the part of a comedian. What was hard for me at the time, or what I realized my weakness was, and I still have to fight it, was just talking at them, not to them. And I wanted that. Back in the day, I was more comfortable. I would seek out the open mics that had like a stage and lights where I couldn't see the audience, because some bars even have that. And I preferred that because that was what I was comfortable with, is like being up on the stage, not looking at the people. Or if I look at them, it's that fourth wall thing. It's my choice. I'm in charge of this. And so that was such an interesting thing to dissolve in me. And then again, the pandemic helped so much those years because, that year we were all like, oh God, you have to do it in a closed space with low ceilings, right? All of the really true things that make up a good comedy room. But then we were like, fine, we'll do it on a ranch, right? You guys are tailgating and you can barely hear me. I will yell it through the wind. So it became, and it's for you. It's for you. So learning how to talk to them and not at them. And now I prefer, when I can't see an audience, I hate it so much. I hate it. I just did a show where the lights were really too hot and we couldn't get a glimpse at who was in the room. And I did 30 minutes and I wish I had, because after the show, it was like, oh, if I had seen that was you saying that, shouting that thing out, it would have been, anyway. So it's cool. Now I prefer it. And now it's for the people. I mean, it's for the people while I'm up on stage. I do not enjoy talking to them after the show.
I agree. I'm totally right there with you. It's funny because I've talked about it on this podcast as well, about how I struggle with social anxiety and talking to people. And it's weird because people meet me and they're like, once I get to know people and I'm comfortable around people, it's whatever. But until then, and especially doing comedy where, we're in a situation where we got to be around some people and we're talking to people. But it's different because you do have there's that barrier there, that invisible barrier of I'm on, the stage, you're there.
I have the microphone.
Exactly.
Microphone. I know. I don't. If we're making real small talk, it makes me uncomfortable, which is so stupid because it's always good news if somebody is coming after a show and saying, I related to you, whatever it is. I had this before I did comedy. I used to do school gigs, hour-long programs for parents and teachers about raising teenagers, parenting teenagers, and getting through adolescence together. And I did one of those recently, and I originally started doing stand-up comedy to inform that show, just to give it some more, try out some funny bits. And then anyway, it doesn't matter. I did one of these shows recently where I did the parenting show, and it's so cool how much better it is because I've woven in all of this comedy that I can la. But the difference is at the end of a show like that, and those are good gigs that pay well and like send me up to the mountains overnight and stuff. People are crying at the end of it. At the end of my hour about parenting, and I'm there and I'm giving them hope. And a lot of it is maybe hopeful crying. You've hit a chord with us. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I'm in it right now with my teenager. Thank you for giving me hope is generally, but it's also, that's why I started doing comedy. Like I said, I had something to say about parenting and protecting the young people and getting them through to adulthood. And it's still the thing I care about the most, but it's so much more fun after a show to be laughing about it than crying about it.
Yeah, totally. I can totally see that. Well, and I think too, like, as long as I don't have to like engage in the conversation too, like that's where it's like, I'm not good. If somebody comes up after the show and says really enjoyed it, really related. And, it's like, oh, cool. Yes. I can say, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes.
But then when they want to go deeper and they start that conversation, that's when I'm just like, oh no.
Don't you think
I don't know how to do
worse
this?
do you think it's gotten worse after 2020 also? I mean, I'm like, I'll come home from shows sometimes, even Mike, and I go, have we lost all ability to just be in community? Because why do these people think I give a shit about their life story?
I definitely
walk to my car.
Think you're right about that. I think that's definitely changed, people's need for companionship,
Yeah, it might be.
I mean, for me, I've always been this way, where always been little socially awkward. And
no, me too. If we're making small talk, I'm dying inside, is what I say.
Unless I know you, unless I've built a friendship or some kind of a relationship with that person, that's different. But
and including this, right? We're having a cool conversation because it's a podcast. We both know that it has parameters and boundaries. And
exactly.
Hear me. I'm really enjoying it. I know. Well, we're all freaks. I mean, that's true story. I venture that every comic has a little bit of that.
Yeah. And I think also with that too, like it's easier to relate to people in your industry to where we just met, but we can have a conversation that sounds like we've been friends for a long time, because even though we don't necessarily know each other personally, we know each other because we know the type,
Yeah, right.
We know the type.
Well, I know you because I've been listening to your podcast, so that's always part of it.
Well, that's great. Yeah. But yeah, I've always found having conversations with, comics is a lot easier, or is easier than just like if somebody comes up after a show wants to do small talk. But even that sometimes, like I'll go to a show or go to an open mic and I'm just an awkward guy in the corner. Like, I don't know how to interact with some of these people. And part of it's, I'm newer to this area. Part of it's I'm older than a lot of people. Part of it's, I'm just not good at striking up conversations and, so there's all kinds of different variables in there, but once I start talking to somebody that's a comic, then it's like, oh, now it's just,
yeah, that's funny, isn't it? Yeah. There's usually some weird thing that we do share. I remember in that same episode, I was listening to you just last night, Mandy Kay saying, would you say, oh, this is where all the marching band kids ended up. I love that.
I know, that was so funny.
I was like, gosh darn, kinda, and theater kids, right? Yeah. Oh, that was funny to me. Kind of true.
Very well. This has been great. I mean, we've been going already. We're deep already in this, but we got to get to your bombing story.
Okay, bombing.
We can't have a full episode of just chit chat. We can, but
I know
we got to get to the meat.
I know. I wrote this down too. Look, I took notes.
Prepared. I like that. You came prepared.
Well, yeah, because there's this that idea of, bombing. Some bombs are just not funny, but also like, what did I learn and whatnot? Okay. So a couple of bombs that I thought about. Okay, one was a corporate gig. And this isn't actually a bomb, but it started as a bomb. Part of it was a bomb. Anyway, this was a corporate gig. And I was their keynote speaker. And they had hired me to it was mortgage lending. Okay, so real estate mortgage people. So I have, in my corporate Quiver, I have, a show about how to get along with people, what I learned from dating in my 50s or whatever, right?
Mhm.
So I had this shtick prepared and I went early and I was watching from the back the session before me. And I said to whoever hired me, they're tired, right? This is the end of the conference. Yeah. Right after me is happy hour, right? Yeah. I just need to be funny, right? Yeah. Cool. Great. So don't worry about my message, right? Because I always come in with like, it's a corporate gig. I've got my here's how I'm weaving in my points. Here's my PowerPoint. I didn't have a PowerPoint, but it's kind of like that.
Mhm.
Like, here are the takeaways. Well, I realized as usual at these corporate gigs that they don't give a shit. I'm here to be funny. So I'm keynote speaker. I'm last. All they know is that this last boring guy talking about how they should, manage their social media. He's done. Next up after me, and they're looking at their watches. I've got an hour, probably had 45 minutes, and then it's happy hour. So I started as I do. I had no introduction. I had practically no introduction. It just came to the front of the room. Hey, everybody. Okay, so our next speaker is Lisa Lane. And I went, yeah, whatever. I get up there and I start doing my shtick, which my general opener is some version of I know I look like, right? And so I'm doing a couple of I know I look like jokes. And then anyway, I see them and then I see them warm up and eventually it's good and eventually it's great. And I have a great set and there are parents in the room. So I tell my teenager stuff and then I get into a little bit of the dating and it's kind of dirty and it's great. I have a great set in the end. Then I went to their cocktail party because I was invited and several of them came up to me and said, oh my God, we didn't know who you were. We were so psyched. So they didn't know that they were expecting comedy. So
Oh,
they were
yeah.
just thinking, okay, who's this speaker? Why is she going, I know I look like I'm here to speak to the manager. I know I look like a lesbian. I know I could. Like, why is she saying these things? And these women were telling me, and then guys, all of them were just like, oh, yeah, that was amazing. Then we realized like 3 minutes in, oh, shit, she's a comedian. Oh, great. We
Oh,
don't have to
wow.
learn. So I learned right then and there, yes, indeed, it does matter how you're brought onto the stage.
Well, it also matters how they market whatever it is,
Yeah,
like
no
that's,
kidding.
even if, yeah, the
Yeah.
introduction obviously is important, but letting, people
Right, where
need to
was I in the
know.
program? Exactly.
Yep,
Now, this was a
exactly.
right back from pandemic thing, so it was probably smaller than they had been before, so maybe there wasn't a program, and I remember they were still worried about distancing even though we were gathered, so, I mean, there was a whole bunch of stuff going on there, but yeah, right, exactly. Why wasn't there a slide in their thing? Lisa Lane,
Mhm.
comedian, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Interesting,
absolutely. Yeah, because that's
interesting.
really, especially with corporate gigs, those are the, well, it's comedy anyway. You got to be able to market it. It's just like
Yeah,
if you're doing a storytelling show versus a traditional stand-up show,
right,
you need to be able to, whoever's coming needs to know that's what it is,
exactly.
Like I had that. So I did a one-person show and I did it at this venue. It was a public venue because we were taping it. And the the place kept wanting to market it as a stand-up show because I did stand-up. And I kept trying to explain to them that, hey, this isn't just stand-up. Like there's some deep stuff here. It was, because it was about a relationship that I was in that had ended. And I was like, this is, it's not just stand up. I'm doing some poetry. I'm doing, it's a one person show. This is what it needs to be
Yeah,
marketed.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they kept marketing it as a comedy show. And it was around the holidays. And so they booked a holiday party, bought a bunch of tickets for their their
Right.
employees because to them it was marketed as a comedy show.
Uh-huh, around
And
the
so
holidays.
around the holidays. So it was a cheap way for them to do
Yeah.
something fun, but then you come in there and it's not quite, some of them were a little confused and rightfully so.
Uh-huh,
I
uh-huh,
mean,
uh-huh.
overall, it was still a good show. I mean, they still had good reactions and they were respectful and everything like that. But I think if they would have known that that's what it was, they probably wouldn't have picked that as their
Yeah,
entertainment,
right,
and
right.
rightfully so. And
Yeah,
maybe
right.
they would have. I don't know, but
Yeah. Yeah, funny, right? Yeah, there you go. I mean, and sometimes with corporate, I've done the thing where I've shocked people because I'm sensing like, okay, they're giving me permission. And then I cross a dirty line, I cross a little blue line there. But it's all kind of so far it's been mostly fun and games, like, oh, sorry, I said that. And I usually get away with being really blue, but that's my person. First of all, I usually wear pearls. I mean, I come across, I try to make it like, oh, can you believe, oh golly, but still that's a funny thing that like corporations, corporate speakers, maybe they don't want that, right? And that's on me. But yeah, right, the expectation. So that was just a funny one and a reminder to all comics. I mean, some people go overboard on this when you're introducing them at some stupid bar show. They hand you their, bona fides. I don't, whatever. For me, the only I just like it when a host will ask me, and I, as a host, always ask, is there anything you want me to say? And in my case right now, it's always about, do I want you to lead with my Netflix credit or not? Because sometimes, yes, please do. I'm going to use that in my set, and I want you to know who I am in that way. And sometimes, please don't mention it. I don't want to. I mean, partly just because I don't want to deal with it, right? I only have 10 minutes on this show, and I don't want to go into that. And anyway, so that was one of my bombs. Another, okay, this was another one. This is the one that my shiny new husband that comes to his head because he saw it happen, and it was really interesting. It was a bar show, but it was a good bar show. It was a Friday evening in 2022 in the northern suburbs of Denver. So these are people who look like me, dress like me, have kids my kids' age. I mean, really, that I look like
your demographic.
Wholly my demographic. You can tell they were older. And I mean, always. And the young, my comedy boys, as I've been calling them these years that I've been doing this, with all these young men around me, they, in the back in the day, they couldn't believe it. Nancy Norton said I had a superpower one time that when there are women in the house, I'm empowering for them. And we were all like, really, with my dick jokes? Am I? Okay. But then it would happen. Like they would see young women, like seriously, like if I have any fans, if there's anybody who ever recognizes me, it's women, and they just throw themselves. Okay. So it's that kind of show. I'm gonna crush. This is my people. And I go out, and my sweet spot is always doing I mean, even if I have a tiny short set at Comedy Works, I try to come out sort of cleanish, innocent, even like speak to the manager. I look like a Karen. I'm not. And then at a certain point, I switch into the blue stuff, and it is so fun. And it's so funny because it's powerful, right? Because people clutch their pearls and like, oh my God, we can't believe I've established that I'm a high school teacher, for example. We cannot believe what this lady just said about sucking dick, So that's my fun spot. So I was doing that, and I was at this, like I said, Friday night show. I probably had 20 minutes, and the teenager stuff is going great. And then I establish that I am an empty nester. So now my kids are out the house. So yay for me. And then I got a divorce. And at that point in the comedy, I can either say at this point in my life, and now I am newly married, or I just play the 50-year-old single lady, right? Yep. Sometimes it's just more efficient to do that. So that's what I did. And I lost him. I left that. It was a bomb. That was a bomb. It was like, for really rare, like people like, what the hell just happened? Lisa Lane doesn't usually just die like that on stage. Came back home, listened to it 3 times. And at first I was like, no, they're laughing. Oh, wait. Oh, I get it. They're laughing late, and they're laughing quietly. And what I did is I just alienated all of my people. The women in the house were there with their husbands. I started talking about being single and divorced. I started being a threat to their husbands. I started talking about how much I love sucking a dick. At that moment, I realized when there are couples in the house, that can be a very divisive little thing. And I need to pay attention to that. Again, when I can see couples, I can see sometimes, or like I'll watch on my tape, I have just made a couple, a cis straight couple, nervous by how much I'm talking about this because she don't like it so much as I do, right? So in that moment, I saw, because the people who were laughing, seriously, we watched my tape 3 times, my husband and I, were the guys, and they were laughing late. They were waiting to see if it was okay to laugh, and then they were chuckling at all of that. I lost their wives. I became a threat to these happily married women. And it was so interesting because I'm not always a threat to happily married suburban women, but I think I had like established so much for the first half of that set. Like, we're the same people. I raise teenagers. They suck. Don't your teenagers suck? Okay, but it's going to be great. You get through it. Oh, but also now I'm this. I lost them. And it was just awful. And but I think that's exactly what it did. And now I have been much more aware that is a possibility.
And that's the great thing about that bomb is that you were able to see the defining moments of
Right?
where you lost them. You know what I mean? Like
Correct.
you could observe that and
But
being
only
able
3
to
times through,
correlate
Dan, I'm
that.
telling you. I was like, "What the fuck just happened?" And then
Yeah.
right? And I go, "Oh, I see. Yep, nope, I did that. I did that." Yeah, and it happened one other time to a smaller degree, and I knew it was happening, but it was a short set at an open mic in Dallas, so who cares? But I had a lot of jokes back in the day about banging black men, and, I really pissed off a black woman, and I got it, and I knew it was happening, and it was kind of funny in the moment because I realized I was sort of turning the room of these black women there who did not want this little white blonde lady. Yeah, but again, it was fast. I was out. I didn't really care. And it was kind of funny. It's kind of fun to do that, but that was not a great set because I was pissing people off. But anyway, so that was a big one where I just went, huh, I really didn't connect with this, like I said, crowd who should be mine.
Mhm.
And then and as I say, that was a really good. You don't want to mind it, fuck it too much, right? But as you said, it's so good, Dan. It's like you're in the relationship. I gotta give. That's a perfect example. I could have
Yep.
just said, well, those prude people up there. No, I don't want to do that again. I want to get, and the truth is with that particular, because then you just mind fuck it for the rest of your life. If only I had said that. If only I hadn't missed that tag. But I could have said in that room, I could have just said, I got remarried again because these were happily married people, and the jokes about being married at this age are funny and sexy and just as
Mhm.
fun for me to tell. I didn't anyway. And the truth was that kind of freaked me out. And then I kind of got off of the dick sucking jokes for a long time. Also, just because I also wanted to prove that I could. I mean, there were
Mhm.
there were sets when I would go to sort of comic friends of mine, like, "Hey, did you see that? I did 15. I didn't talk about it if
See
you
what I
want."
did there?
Like, well,
I
it's
didn't do my
fine.
normal stuff.
But then, like we were talking about at the beginning of our conversation, doing all of this nursing home comedy, I also know that it is such a good experiment in doing clean, right? And I
Mhm.
know that clean is funnier, and I know that clean is better. And when clean works, it is the most fun, but it's still anyway. So then, like I said, the past 4 shows I did, I was encouraged to do. One of them was like the nasty show, so bring out the full. Oh, it's so fun.
You know, it's funny.
Refreshing.
I've been labeled a clean comedian for a long time, and I said it before, and I'll say it again. I didn't set out to be a clean comedian.
Hmm.
I'm a comedian. That's how I feel about it. I'm not trying to be anything. I know that working clean can lead to more gigs and
Yeah.
so on and so forth. But what I will say is, I did get booked for on a festival, and they put me on their blue show.
Funny.
and
Funny.
and then I have to and I have like material that's not wouldn't it's not necessarily clean, but it's also not really blue either. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
material. I mean,
Yep.
you couldn't do it on certain clean shows,
Right.
but you could just do it to a general audience
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And then I do have stuff that is super blue, but I've got to the point where if I try to be super blue, I'm not I'm not winning that audience over. Like
No.
they don't want to
No.
listen to me be
Nope.
super dirty.
Correct.
You know?
No, Steve Ranazizi, I opened for him for several shows, and he said to me, he goes, "Oh no, it's your moment, old lady." He's like, "You can go talk about dicks in Nebraska, but I can't. No, white man can't. Nope, 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 nope." Yeah, it's true. It's true. And obviously that's part of it. And obviously that's why it is empowering to me. And the truth is, all comedy is fun, right? Killing is fun. Communicating with people and hearing them laugh is fun, 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 fun. Doesn't matter how I do it, really. But obviously, that was part of growing up in the era I grew up in as a woman,
Mhm.
being in the marriage I was in, blah, 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 right? Coming out into I certainly did not start out to be a blue comedian. I started out to just tell jokes about teenagers and parenting teenagers. And
Mhm.
like you're saying, that's not work that's dirty. But I'll say douchebag in it, and it's like gritty and kind of human, but it's funny. And then the truth is, I got a divorce, and then comedy became my boyfriend when I was single at age 50 because I could go out every night and have have comedy there for me. So then it became fun. I mean, then it just became absolutely like a
You're like,
crazy
"No holds
insane.
are.
Totally right. Exactly right. And to go, I am going to go down to Comedy Works where like my former Catholic priest might be in the audience. I mean, just it's possible. And am I really going to go there and tell these dirty jokes? And I, at the time, decided I had 2 people in the world who I needed to check in with, my 2 grown sons. And they were like, yeah, mom, whatever. Doesn't surprise us at all. They don't watch it. They don't want to watch my comedy, but they're like, yeah, good, hilarious. They like that their friends watch it, you know? And then other than, yeah, it was just fun. I mean, that's it. It's just like so stupid fun. And part of it, of course, is because it's shocking. And part of it, exactly. And that is exactly why, no, coming from you, it's a different thing.
Yeah. And I
Coming
so
from
much
me,
so, I mean, when I lived in San Diego and I did a lot of experimental comedy too, when I was coming up, just, trying to find what direction you wanted to go or whatever. I did create a character. I had a character, Dirty Dan, that I would introduce and then do the blue stuff. And then it worked because I was
Sure.
introducing it as a
There you
character.
go. Yep, there you
And
go.
that's the one thing that, and I hadn't done it in a long time. And I think that said, if I would have did that route where I introduced the character of Dirty Dan instead of just doing, stand up and adding some of those jokes in there, I probably would have been better on that blue show.
Yeah.
But I've gotten away from doing that character because it's not my brand either.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
another thing I
Isn't
think
that
about is
interesting? Yeah.
I'm like, sure, I could bring out the character and then that gives me permission and more leeway from an audience to say some of the stuff, but it's just not on my brand anymore.
Yeah, right. And that's it. It's so interesting, right? Because I think, what am I doing with comedy? And somebody said to me, somebody dear to me, I said, I guess I've proven I'm funny. I mean, that was really all I didn't think I was funny. And so, yeah, okay, I'm funny. What else do I even need to do? And, he said, well, do you still have something to say? And that's the thing. And that branding changes in my heart based on what it is I have to say. What is it that I really have to say? And somehow, how do all the blue jokes work in there? But then somehow I can see it now. And again, I don't know how long that'll be interesting to me to do that stuff, but it does seem to work into this kind of empowering. The young people find me empowering, Dan. Empowering actually in my mind, sort of postmodern feminist, like, yeah, no, I get to be dirty and I get to talk about these things. And comedy used to get me, being funny used to get me in trouble. And now I'm using, there is something at my age where it does feel a little bit like, no, this is still part of something I want to say.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's good that you know that. And then you can take that and take advantage of it. And really, because there's people who think they want to be that way and then they don't have the confidence in that material. And that's another part of it is if you don't believe in the material and your ability to do it, it's not going to work, And I feel like for me, that's where it is like in my heart of hearts, if you will, I knew that I'm just not a blue comedian anymore.
Yep. That's awesome.
To where I'm like, well, I'm on this blue show. I'll try to be dirty, but it becomes forced and not.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
And not like what I want. It's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to be funny,
But that's it. But I think that you're in such a great, unique position because have you ever been on like a clean competition show? Like at Comedy Works, they used to run the clean competition. And anyway, it's like ridiculous to me how all of us are back there in the green room going, oh God. Like it's the biggest deal in the world to try to be clean for 5 minutes. Like, come on. We all have 5 minutes of clean material. Yeah. And yet somehow it's like we're all just freaking 8th graders, right? Because take something away from me and tell me I can't do it. And now I want to do it really bad.
Yep. And that's one thing I've seen to me that's funny is I haven't done I don't think I've done a specific clean comedy competition.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I've seen it in other scenarios where a family walks into, you're at a venue that is like a restaurant and there's going to be a comedy show. And then a family comes in and suddenly all the comics panic. And I'm just like, whatever.
Out. Exactly. There you go.
I'm like, whatever. Kids, they're probably not going to pay attention anyway, but I'm also not going to say anything they shouldn't hear. They're probably not going to understand what I'm talking about because they're kids and they don't. I mean,
I've done it when somebody has like a 1-year-old there. I'm just going to tell my whole set and be
and that's different though.
Right. But no, you're right. When a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old is there, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do that. That's funny. Well, see, I'm just saying, I think you're in a much better position to be able to go, yeah, I don't really know if you want to put me on your dirty show than the rest of us who are like, can I really do a clean show? And that is true. And now I know I can't. And part of this retirement home comedy has helped me with that. And that was part of the reason I wanted to do it, because if I have goals, I don't know if I do think in my mind, like, I think I'd be really good on cruise ships. I would like to try that kind of maybe. So I need to get better and strengthen that clean muscle, which is so funny because now that I've been doing it, truly doing it, and haven't told, like, even for my New Faces set at Comedy Works, I did not tell a particularly sexy, it wasn't clean, but I mean, I didn't go to my branded, I did more teenager stuff because I don't know why, it doesn't matter, but I've just been trying to be much cleaner, and I have been much cleaner, so that now I go, oh yeah, of course I can go do a clean set. But the first few times that I was like, I mean, and like I said, people would say to me, oh, Lisa Lane, you don't have 15 minutes of clean material. Because I was, like I said, part of that was because in 2019, it was the great big, coming out party of me just going, yeah, this is just fun. And why do I say it? Because I can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. Well, and I think too, it's like having I think you need to have all the tools. You know what I mean? Like I talk about, so I mostly do clean comedy. I can do blue,
Yeah.
and I will go blue if I have to. Like if I know, so like if I'm at a bar show
Yeah.
and the bar's not paying attention and they're being rowdy and obnoxious, I will say dirt. I will go blue because I know as a comedian and as somebody that's been doing it for a while, I know that if I do that, I will get their attention.
Yeah.
And then if I keep going, I will keep their attention.
Yeah.
So I think it's good for every comedian to have all the tools, whether you want to be a blue comedian or a clean comedian or, whatever, you should have all those tools in your tool belt to where you can, you'll be versatile. You'll be able to do anything.
Yeah. And I say that's why some of those crazy days back in the day of really, like I mentioned before, Lions Lair at 1 a.m. back in the day was just a free for all. And who knows? And that was it. That's where I finally, for the first time, would just, because as we talked about, I was a performer. So I was one of those people who at the beginning, I would write out my sets word for word and I was going to do my set no matter what. And then obviously you realize as any kind of performer, okay, not here. And so we just start doing whatever, right? Trying to, I mean, that's where crowd work came from. And in me, it was kind of this thing that just came up of like, I taught high school English. I can just treat this like an English class. I can treat it like a bunch of high schoolers who are being idiots and dress them down or, whatever it takes. But like you said, that's how I developed those tools of just being able to, it made me good. I mean, that's what I say. It made me better. And then same with pandemic, just accosting people or doing material for people who had every reason to not be there, who had every reason to walk away. Right. And then just realizing it's for them and whatever relationship I'm in, whatever they need right now to laugh. I mean, there you go. That doesn't sound desperate, but whatever it is that they're going to laugh at right now, that's where I want to be. That's what I want to be doing.
Yep. Want to be giving them whatever they want so that, I get what I want out of it. I mean, when you say it like that, it does sound selfish,
right.
But I mean, but it's also you're also, like I said, you're also making some of those sacrifices, because you're
100%.
giving them what they want to get what you want.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think it sounds like pathological, like anything you need, whoever you want me to be, I'll be it, Daddy. Just tell me. But, right, like I'll change. What is it that you want now? You want clean? I'll do clean for you. It does come from a certain amount of needing affirmation. I have never lost my mind and like yelled at an audience. I have seen it done, and I have seen it done brilliantly. And most recently, I won't mention names, I guess, just because I don't have permission to be talking about somebody. But anyway, I saw this comic that I respect, we all respect, and he just lost it on a very terrible crowd, a bar crowd who was just so drunk and so stupid. I mean, I didn't bomb that set, but that was a set where I was just like, whatever. But I did 10 minutes. Okay, headliner went up, lost his mind. And it was so funny. I mean, we were like, this is a virtuoso performance. We were just applauding and applauding. And he came off the dais and he actually felt terrible because he lost his mind. He said, no, angry at those people. And I was like, okay, well, you have a very funny, angry man inside you who made that so amusing and so funny. And he did get through his set and he called it back. I mean, it seemed so masterful. And like in such a funny way that he was yelling at one point, this woman started to get up and he's like, no, fuck you. You have diverted me this long. You are not leaving this room for my punchline on this. I mean, like, so funny. And they just kept sassing him back. I mean, it was, for us on the sidelines, it was one of the funniest goddamn things I have ever seen. This guy got off the stage and felt terrible because he had actually lost his mind.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen too with a comedian who, lost it on a heckler and then called the heckler a bad name, and then that made it even worse.
Right?
Because at first when he started kind of going in on this heckler, he had the audience. The rest of the audience was on his side.
Yep,
and then he just snapped and got really mean, called her a bad name, and then lost the whole room.
Yep.
And that was during a comedy competition.
Oh, wow.
Too.
So I've never had that moment. You know what I mean? And I don't know what I would do in that case. But in general, like, lucky me so far, I've been able to, okay, I'll adjust. It's not my style and it's not my comedy to go, you people suck. Are you even listening? You don't get it because you're dumb. You know, that's not.
Yeah.
The audiences need to like me to get my jokes. And so I'm never that kind of but anyway, it's just funny when you lose them. And
Well, this has been great. We're gonna real quick. Let's talk, because you talked about how, working these retirement gigs have kind of helped you hone in on some of your writing and stuff. What is your writing process like? Are you a sit down and write, or just kind of think of ideas and work it out?
I am all of the things. I'm a carry the joke book and write it down, get it out of my head person, write down the germ of an idea. I am a sit down and write it out. It's funny, sometimes I need to do it actually writing on pads of paper. And I still tend to, I have a pile I'm looking at right there, go through all the notebooks and shit that I've had lying around my life for the past, 2 months, pull them out. And then I'm pretty good about, I go and I put it in a Google Doc. I mean, I'm a grown up woman and I am pretty good at clearing out those, all the scribbles, putting them in a Google Doc, writing. I do write jokes. I sit and write on the computer. I think that way. And more and more, which happens, right? More and more the past couple of years, and I was ever more comfortable doing. I also run a weekly open mic. So that is my new material Monday. And so I will also go in with only a germ of an idea, only a rant that I want to make, maybe a punchline. Sometimes, hopefully I'll go in with more than just a premise, but I'll kind of go and start talking around it. I still almost always tape every single set that I do. I mean, even just in my back pocket, I record it, I go home and I listen to it for a lot of different things. I also encourage comics. Sometimes I forget I used to do it maniacally. I would always try to get a video of my set, just put my phone somewhere. And personally, I don't know if it's worse for women than men, but I think it might be. Personally, I got to remind myself to do that because what I wear and how I look and all of that, it matters to me and it matters on stage. So I still do all of that, get the information, but like I talked to you about at the beginning of this too, I'm a little bit behind on my website, just like in terms of putting newer work up there. So I know I have this archive of tapes that are good and quality that I want to clip, whatever, put them in the right places. So, but I'm often not taping for that reason. I'm just taping to learn, come home. And the fun process of being with other comics who will give you a tag or whatever, and run it through like so yeah, I do all the things. Sometimes I write while I'm talking. A lot of times I will be telling a friend a story, right, or an incident from my life, and I can hear myself, and I'm sure my best friends know this, they can hear me doing it too, don't we all, comics? I can hear myself starting to write it, right? I'm telling you how it happened, and I'm putting in the funny lines that are going to become the thing there.
Yeah,
but I'm pretty good. Not as disciplined as I feel like I should be. There's a lot of shoulds around comedy and me right now, I really feel like I should sit and write more and sit and do all of it. The
Yeah,
clip.
I'm right there with you. Every
That is
day I
it.
think
It's all
about this.
creative process. I think I should. And the truth is, and you've been talking about this to other comics too. I'm really happy right now, and I don't have the compulsion to go do it so much because I have a great life, and I just spent a lot of time with my kid who was home for 2 months this summer, whom I don't see very much because he lives abroad. And last night I could have gone out and done a whatever, but I'd rather hang out with my husband. So it's a wonderful problem to have, but you worry it makes you weak.
Yeah, but
Um,
if you're doing other gigs, doesn't make you weak. That's the other thing I always look at it too, is that sure, I'm not going to open mics on a regular basis, maybe that's a little more sporadic, but I still, even cutting back on my performances, when I do perform, I'm still performing regularly where I'm not doing like perform once
yeah.
every 3 or 4 months. I'm
Yeah,
still
no,
going
exactly.
out
Yeah. Same.
multiple times in a month. So it's
Same,
not.
and that retirement home comedy, like you say, is exactly that. It's just a place to go and talk the words out of my mouth.
Yep.
I can't run
And
over the 30 ones,
get
but that
you're
and my
getting
mic.
longer sets too, though. You're getting
Yeah,
longer sets. That's the other
yeah,
thing. You talked about, sitting for 3 hours for 3 minutes, and I talk about this a lot about quality of stage time. That comics don't think about that either. They think, oh, I just got to be on stage, and
I know.
sure, you can get something out of being on stage in front of other comics, maybe technically and stuff, but there's a lot of things you don't get. So you got to compare that with the
Totally
quality
right.
time.
And you're right. And I realized that probably like a year and a half ago. I went, oh, you know what's more efficient use of my time is to get drop-ins on my friends' shows or drop-ins on anybody's shows, because then
Mhm.
even if I'm doing 5 minutes and I'm there for the 2 hours of the show, I'm watching other comics do their good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I have an audience usually. So
Yep.
that's exactly right. I treat that like open mics a lot. And like I said, I still run my one little open mic on Monday nights, and it is the most inconsistent open mic in Denver. Some nights we'll have 30 people, 40 people. Some nights we'll have 6. I don't get it. We can't figure out what it relies upon, but it is a chance for me to just, keep the dust out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's
Mhm.
great. Well, we're
Yeah.
going to start wrapping up.
Awesome.
Talk about bombing. I like to go out positive. You listen to podcasts, so you already know. I want to hear about one of your favorite gigs that you've done so far.
Favorite gigs that I did so far, one of them, and I told you, like, it's when women are in the audience. It was in Pueblo, Colorado. Not what you'd think of as your best show. And I
I'm going
may
to
or
be
may
there
not
in
have been
October.
what's that?
I'm there in October.
You are? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Anyway, whatever it was, I just did my stuff, and I would and it was one of those glamorous road tours. I was on a little bit of a tour where, like, I hadn't figured this out that I needed to, like, change in a gas station bathroom kind of, and do
Mhm.
my hair at the gig, which was at a bar in a bathroom. So it was one of those, like, I wasn't feeling very glamorous about it. But then anyway, after the show, these 2 young women ran into the restroom behind me and said, one of them said to me, "You should be so proud of yourself as a human being." And then she and her friend said, "We want t-shirts with your picture on them." So they were just fangirling me in this hard way. And they were like 25-year-old young women. And I don't really get why. I mean, again, it wasn't like I was mean. I don't go out there and do an empowering TED talk for the youth, right? And then anyway, so then they followed me on the Instagram. And again, those were some of the people who reached out when my Netflix show came out, and they were just like, "Bitch, you are all over TikTok now. You're amazing." So the fact that these young people followed me like a stalker fangirl into the bathroom and continued to be big fan, something about that it just really tickled me.
That's
And I
awesome.
would
That's
never forget
amazing.
that
That's
show.
fantastic. Well, the last one is we've got the Art of Bombing Get Pumped playlist. Doesn't have to be a song that gets you pumped for comedy, but just gets you pumped. What's a song you would add to the playlist?
Oh, that's right. Wait, I wrote it down.
Oh, you really came
I
prepared.
really did. But wait, I know I did.
Lost in the notes, though.
Yes, lots of my scribbly scrabbly notes. Okay. So because there's a couple of different ones, and that used to be in my comedy pump up playlist. I think I'm gonna go with Just a Girl, Gwen Stefani.
That's a good one.
that was a song that I actually played over and over again in my head before I went and told dirty jokes at like Comedy Works for the first time. So that was something. Yeah, I
Near
think I'm
and
gonna go with
dear.
that one.
Perfect.
What's that?
I said, so it's near and dear.
Near and dear, actually, and like pump me up about just go and do your thing. Yeah, girl
That's great.
power. Girl power in the era of the new Barbie. So there you go.
I love it. All right. Well, this has been fantastic.
So
Thank you
fun.
so
Thanks,
much for
Dan.
doing this.
Yeah,
Where
thank
can
you.
people, where do you want people to go check you out? Where can they
Check
find
me
you?
out at my website is beyondmamabear.com. If you Google Lisa Lane comedy, maybe I throw Denver in there, you'll find me. I do have a YouTube and stuff like that, which I don't work very hard, but Beyond Mama Bear is my website, and you can go see clips and see pictures and see my show calendar and order my books, because I do have 2 books about parenting teenagers, which are funny, one's serious, and real, more than that funny, and the other one's funny. So check those out, and then check out my on, like I say, on my page you'll see all my upcoming shows, except usually not the retirement homes.
Well, yeah, because
you're not welcome.
You're not welcome. They're not
Those
public.
are private shows.
You're not welcome until you're old enough to live there.
Exactly. But see, like you're saying, I'm 55. Later this year, I technically could move into these joints, and it's kind of tempting. They have very good food.
That's a good reason. Well, thank you
So nice
again.
to
This
talk
has
to you,
been
Dan.
great.
Take care. That was really fun. See ya.
This has been a Dan Bublitz comedy production.